I think that's important for the video.
Okay.
We'll just have to look like this.
I will do this.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll give me a headache very quickly.
I don't mind if you want it off and forget the video. He would prefer no video, so you can.
That will give me a headache in like 3 minutes.
Pratiksha, he's not able to handle the lights, so you can put the lights off and cancel the video. Ma'am? Lights.
Hello.
He can't handle the lights. Can you put the lights off and forget about the video? He can't face them.
Hi.
He can't handle the lights.
Can we? Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, it's late.
We can.
Or you have to close your.
Is that good or bad?
I will take another 40 minutes.
No, but it doesn't matter. Much better.
Much better.
Thank you. Thank you. You just ask some questions.
Hello and hello. Does everyone want to come right up front? It's yeah. Since there's so few of us. Yeah, so thank you, and thank you for coming so early in the morning. We are here to talk about Mani Rao's translation of the Bhagavad Gita. And Mani is, of course, a poet, a scholar, one of the most brilliant translators I've read. And yes. Okay. So this came out a while ago. Multiple editions have come before, and we have come out with a new edition this November, which I'm happy to report is already being reprinted. Gita, of course, needs no real introduction. We all think we know it. Do we know it, though? That is one of the things we will talk about. So I guess, Mani, my first question to you would be, what made you want to translate the Gita?
Thank you, Rahul. Also, thank you for actually bringing out another edition. Rahul is the key person behind the existence of this book in continuity. Today, it has seen several editions since when I first translated it in 2008. Of course, there is a big difference in this edition, which we will explain later. See, I'm primarily a poet. And when I first got interested in, I would say, Indian heritage or early texts, I was reading them in Sanskrit. Around the time that I was doing a course in translation studies, one of my class exercises was to compare translations of a single text and do a textual analysis. And when I said I would do Gita Govinda, my professor, Giuseppe Natali, suggested, why not Gita? Because he knew that. And there were so many translations available. So I looked at 4 or 5 different translations of just a few shlokas, and I was horrified. I was horrified because, not because they were not right. They were all right. They were all fine. They were all within the interpretive lens of whatever they were espousing. But it did not express my experience of the Gita. And I can explain this in a couple of ways. See, normally Gita is chanted in a monotone. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre. And then there's usually a musical sound effect. Ping. Samaveta yuyutsavaha ping. Mamakaha pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Ping. This is the, and then all the 700 shlokas go like that, you know. So there is a particular like a soporific effect as well. But if you're reading it in Sanskrit with a view to understanding it, and if you're receiving the text, that's not how you're reading it in your man, in your heart. How are you reading it? At that time, the whole narrative background exists. There is a context to it. Peace talks have failed. The two armies have come to war. This is a dharma kshetra. What is actually happening there in that first verse is dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. You know, that is the drama in that line. And the translations, I felt, were translating the first way of saying it. In the field of Kuru, in the field of Dharma, what is in the field of Dharma? That makes actually no sense in English, right? So what I wanted to do was to actually translate it without so much of fear of this is a sacred text. Of course it is a sacred text, but I wanted to respond to it sensitively, intelligently, and within my own framework, which we should talk more about. So that was why I translated it. And once I began doing so, I just did it all year long because I was enjoying the text. I was doing research. I was reading the bhashyas. I was working on it every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which was my days off from my degree, you know. So this was in 2008. And of course, you know the rest of the story. Then after that, Penguin published it and so on and so forth. It's been rolling along, continues to get better and better with each edition. Anyway, yeah. So that's why I translated it.
That's an important thing to remember, right? I mean, it is of course considered one of the most important texts, religious, spiritual texts in India, in the subcontinent. But it is also a part of this larger narrative, larger story, the epic Mahabharata. And it is a poem. And that, I think, most remarkably is what your translation does, is it allows us who read in English to receive this as a poem, perhaps almost as if we are Arjuna receiving this for the first time, with that power of poetry and that drama. So you want to talk a little more about the context in which Arjuna is receiving this text?
Yeah, thank you. But I would love to talk about the poetry also. It's very interesting because, yes, it is a religious text. Why is it a religious text? Because we use it that way. Simple. It is an excerpt from the Mahabharata, but you have a figure who is talking to you, who is talking from a position of authority. This is the voice of God talking to humanity. And therefore, we receive it as a religious text, and it has been used that way for centuries. You have Shankara, from Shankara onwards, every religious figure has written commentaries on it. You have Madhvacharya, Ramanuja, everybody has written commentaries on it, and we have considered it as a religious text. It has a lot of ethical guidance, and it has a number of things about the wisdom that would qualify it to be a wisdom text. But it is in the form of poetry. It is Bhagavad Gita. Of course, it is sung. A lot of people say, is he really singing to him in the battlefield? I don't know. That's the format in which they did the poetry in those days. And it is a poem. And the beauty of the poem is very much evident in the Sanskrit. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. You know, the word pairs, the sound pairs, they're all very meaningful. They're not just there for the sake of it. They're very meaningful word pairs. it's a very interesting argument. It just the way that Krishna persuades Arjuna and how he layers on all the concepts. It's very fascinating, and it's a really brilliant piece of literary excerpt also. And so absolutely in the translation, I have focused on the textural aspects, on the sounds, on those word pairings, and on bringing out those resonances. But there is a context to it. And that is the context that a lot of people forget. When they pluck out something and then they take objection to it or they get worried about it. For example, the most common question that I get asked is, well, he doesn't want to fight in the war, and this is not nice. Why is he being forced to go and kill people? Why he doesn't want to fight? He's like such a pacifist, such a good guy. But the point is, read the Gita and you will see, why does Arjuna say he doesn't want to fight? He is afraid of, he talks of Kulakshaya. He talks of Varna Sankara. He is afraid of facing people from his own family. He doesn't want to do something. He's attached to his family. Until then, he has had no problem with such actions. All of a sudden, he's got problems because he's facing his own cousins, his own teachers. And he's come all the way. Peace talks have failed. There's no other choice. As I say, imagine I've come all the way from Bangalore to Bhubaneswar, and then I come all the way from where I'm staying to the stage, and then I'm standing on the side and saying, Siddhanti Mama Gatrani. No, I'm here. I have to get up on stage and I have to do this. You have to face it. You have to do what you have to do. That's what action means, is act. And even Arjuna doesn't know if he is doing right or wrong. He says, I don't know who should win. Should they win or should we win? I don't know. We often don't know. And we still have to act. We still have to make an assessment using whatever our capabilities and our tools of intelligence are, and we have to move forward. So people actually relate to it, I think, because they wake up in the morning and what do they have? Poverty, unemployment, depression, some child is disabled, person in the family is sick. These are all the challenges we have, and yet they have to get up and face. Yet they have to get up and fight. So people relate to the Gita because they go through a crisis and it teaches them to face the world with detachment and to take action and to lift themselves up. Uddhareta atmana atmanam. So there is a context to it. And I think that context becomes more open to us when we actually read it. If you're just going to hear, oh, Gita, this is a violent thing, I'm not going to read it. Okay, reject it and you're not ever going to know more about it. But once you start reading it, all these contextual aspects come alive and you become open to the actual message of the Gita and to the beauty of the poem. Sorry, I went on a little too long. And
yeah, we'll pull you back, to the poetry of it. And yeah, so that of course is the most apparent aspect where your translation differs from the various other translations that have come before. What other things do you think you're kind of approaching differently in your translation?
A lot of things. I would say that, look, all translations come to it mostly from a doctrinal perspective. You will see that the Chinmayananda believers, followers, or school of thought will all be Advaita based. They will all focus more on jnana, on knowledge. Somebody who has dedicated his or her book to Bhakti Vedanta will most likely be focusing on devotion. This is very, very apparent. You will see the interpretations absolutely follow the doctrinal lens, right? I mean, Gandhi converts karma into service, into seva. This is in the commentaries and in the interpretations, the person's position comes through. So the question is, what is my interpretation. I would say that I have looked at the internal evidence of the Gita to interpret words. For example, the word papa. I will look at every instance of the use of the word papa in the Gita and look at what is the correct way to translate it. You know, is it error? Is it ignorance? Is it mistake? Is it sin? And in which context is what? And I will look at the poetic aspects. I will look at it as a self-contained literary text. And of course, I mean, there is also, I would say, the philosophy of my own guru, which is focused on the only religion is love. So absolutely, I wanted to make sure to highlight all those aspects because there's a lot in the Gita about egalitarianism and love and treating every being equally, samadarshana. And all those messages are really important. And so that is my lens. And I wanted to create a spoken word. My assessment of it was more on the literary side. For example, Krishna is talking to Arjuna in the middle of the battlefield. He's not standing there and saying, now chapter 2. He's not saying, now chapter 3. There's no atha dvitiyo dhyaya. He's not saying that. He's giving him a speech. Next, Arjuna is not going to understand it if it's not simple and comprehensible. There is no point in translating it in a manner that is not understood, that would require lots of footnotes and commentaries. There are no footnotes in my translation. It's integrated into the translation. Wherever there is an aside from me where I feel it's really required to explain it, it's indented, it's in parentheses. You can tell that it's me adding a point to it. So in that sense, I've removed footnotes, I've removed commentary. It's in the poem form. You can read it from start to finish without knowing. If you don't want to look at the number of the shloka on the left side, you don't really have to know, is it chapter 2 or 3? And the introduction is, like, I think very, very important in this edition. And thank you for enabling this, in which I basically give the reader the tools to approach it themselves. For example, it's very common to talk of 3 parts: bhakti, jnana, karma. So are there really 3 parts in the Gita? And I question that and I give examples. Yoga, what is yoga? There is, even Arjuna Vishada Yoga, everything is yoga. Krishna is Yogeshwara. There is a different way of understanding the word yoga once you start focusing on the Sanskrit without getting too bothered about what has been taught before. So my focus has been approach it directly. On the left side, we have the Sanskrit in Nagari and in Roman diacritics. And then on the right side, you have the translation. So you can actually read the translation. The introduction gives you a toolkit on how to actually assimilate this for yourself if you want to dive deeper into any section. So this translation is different. I would say that my focus is the independence and the freedom of the reader to be able to evaluate it for themselves and not to push down my lens on them.
This would be a good time, I think, to read some.
Okay. So I thought I would read from 2.11, which is in Sanskrit. It starts like this. This is when Krishna starts to speak. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashocyananvashochastvam Pragnya Vadamscha Bhashase Gatasun Agatasunscha Nanushojanti Panditaha. Now, most translations will say, you speak wise words, Arjuna. Is that what the Sanskrit means? No, it means the opposite. Pragnya Vadamscha Bhashase. That's the tone. You think you're speaking wise words. It's the tone that is important in that, right? So the meaning is the opposite of that literal meaning. So that's what I focus on. Krishna. Nice speech, Arjuna, but the truly wise know better than to be sad over life that's gone or not. Life and death pass. I was never not and never won't be. You too and them. You change in this body from child to adult and decrepit, and you change into another body again. Sensations, cold, heat, pleasure, pain are mortal. Sensations are mortal. They come and go. Stay unruffled. By them, get ready for immortality. If it isn't, it isn't. If it isn't true, it isn't real. What you call reality is really virtual reality. Your reality is materiality. Material, changeable, mortal, untrue, immaterial. It seems as if, but there's no truth in fiction. What is clear to a seer. That by which this immaterial matter is permeated is permanent. Bodies end. The embodied, timeless, let's call it it, cannot be measured, destroyed. So fight, Arjuna. More?
Are you planning to?
I can if you
We've been asked.
After that, you want to know what happens after that? Oh, the final part? Okay. Of chapter 18? Okay.
When everything is over, then the world.
Okay.
And it is still lamenting in the crisis of the victory. Moral crisis. You spoke very well.
The starting point is this is 18.63. It's kind of not really where the moral crisis is over, but this is Krishna telling Arjuna, and it has a couple of shlokas that I really like. Thus, knowledge, secret of secrets has been explained to you. Think it over, all of it, then do as you wish. I love this one, where he says, Yathechasi tatha kuru, do as you wish. Huh? And most secret of all, again, my last word, listen again, you are loved for sure by me. So I'll speak for your good. Heart be full of me, be devoted to me, do the rights for me, do homage to me. You'll come to me, I promise truly, you are my love. See, this is so beautiful. Priyo asime. Krishna is telling Arjuna, Priyo asime, you are my love. No translation says that. This is Priya is love, right? I mean, so just say it. You are my love. Give up all paths. Trust me only. I'll free you from all sins. Don't worry. This Gita must not be told to one without austerity, faith, who doesn't want to hear it and who speaks ill of me. She who lays out this utter secret to my devotees, the highest act of devotion, will come to me without doubt. And no one does more loving service than her, and no one will be more beloved to me than her. She who studies this nice dialogue of ours, I'll be loved by her knowledge yajna. That's my take. That's until 18.70. So also the other thing is that
that's what I wanted to. And
I was just thinking that
like,
everything in my translation is a she and a her and not a he and a him, because it's just how I could do it. I was putting myself in Arjuna's shoes and I refer to myself as she, and so I translated it as she. Simple.
Yeah. You have also spoken about and written about the Gita as a radical text, which, if you approach it, if you read it for what it truly is, as opposed to bringing your preconceived ideas about what it should be or should be saying, is a radical text. And would you want to expand on that a bit, maybe?
Thank you, Rahul. See, what happens is that people who have not read the Gita think that it is something that they're going to do as an act of piety. Very piously, you might have Gita part, or you might sort of memorize the Gita. But what's going to come of memorization? It's not a mantra. Gita is not a mantra. Now the way it's being used, somebody dies and they go and read Gita. Okay, so do it because it gives you a like a pious mood or feels consoling because that's a psychological thing. But that's not what it's meant for. It's an excerpt from the Mahabharata. It's an excerpt from the Mahabharata, and it has all these very, very important messages for our life, practical messages for our life. But you look at it as if also, what is the context of it? As I said, Arjuna is concerned about if he kills his own people of his own clan, there will be the women will be violated. There will be a mixture of castes. Then people will not follow pitra karmas, and then they will all go to hell. And so these are the things he's worried about. And then what is Krishna telling him? Krishna basically liberates him from such concerns, right? And if you really look at it, it talks about who is a pandit. Panditaha samadarshiniha. A pandit is one who sees a humble, learned priest and a dog as the same. Right? It talks about equality. Krishna talks about how Krishna is in everybody. It's not, he is in all, sarvabhutastamatmanam. Is in all beings. So it is actually a radical text. It is not something that is sort of like trying to uphold some traditional, social, conventional order. It is not meant for establishing your religious piety. It is actually a very intimate and personal text that everybody who is an activist has used. Is it like, is that a coincidence that Gandhi relied on it? Tilak relied on it. Look, in America, Thoreau relied on it. Emerson relied on it. Wherever you see activists around the world have looked upon the Gita as a guidance and as a compass, because it is a dissident text. Very ironic, such a dissident text has become a flag bearer and an emblem of piety and convention. And you know what I say about it? This is, there's a very interesting book called Botany of Desire, which talks about how seeds fall on the ground and you stamp on them and you think, oh, I've stamped on it, but it propagates itself. So this is really clever, and it's a Trojan horse. Once people get it and they think they're doing something, but once they get into it, it starts doing things to them.
So we're kind of running behind time, but do we have like 5 minutes for questions? I think.
But can I say one more thing? Actually, see, the book is not in the bookshop. There was a problem in the logistics. However, there are big discounts available on Amazon. And if you're interested in anything we've spoken about, please take your phones and buy the book, order it directly to your homes.
This is the edition to look at it closely.
Not the previous editions, because it doesn't have all the interpretation, discussion, and all that, which is going to be important. Thank you. And this has the Sanskrit also.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ankriti. So I actually have a few questions, and we know that we are running short of time. So I'd love to, connect outside.
Maybe
as well.
pick your most important question.
Yeah, right. So keeping in mind, like the topic was like Bhagavad Gita for Gen Z. So how can actually the present generation, like keeping in mind the attention span has really, really, really decreased these days. So how can like through this book, the present generation can actually get a diverse idea of Gita and actually take an inspiration from Gita and use it in their regular lives?
Thank you. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Ankriti.
Ankriti, hi. How many hours can you read at a stretch?
As of now, I think my reading span is 25 minutes, maybe.
25 minutes. Then you'll probably need 5 sessions to read this book. I can tell you that my father had never read the entire Gita in his lifetime. My father is like a scientist-minded person. My translation is the first entire Gita that he read, and he read it in one afternoon.
Lovely.
He read it in it's just, you saw how I read it.
Right.
How I read like how many shlokas in like 3 minutes. You can just read it on the right pages and just start from start to finish. Put little markers beside the ones you want to go back to. Dive deeper on your next session. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And my dad is not Generation Z, no? But I think similar attention spans.
Actually, I wanted to know, like, I have scored in MA English like 100 to 100 in exams, but I have attended also 2 to 3 times in this Calling Literature Festival. I wanted to ask, like, what exactly the literature is. Like, nobody knows what is the literature exactly. People are writing in exams and all, but they don't know what is exactly literature and how the people writing books and all in Amazon, and they are publishing books, but nobody has seen how much copies are sold till now. I have also published 1 or 2 books, but I have
Do you
no
think we
books.
can focus on questions related to my book, please? Because this is like a whole afternoon's conversation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I love the way you described Arjuna's dilemma at the beginning, how he developed cold feet at the last moment, right? Now, the response that Krishna comes up with was not only in terms of, giving him bhashan about being dispassionate, nishkam karma and all that. He also tells him that you have no business to shirk from your duty, your swadharma. Why? Because you are born a kshatriya. So you don't have the option, unlike a Brahmin, of going to a forest and devoting your life to spiritual pursuit. So there is that bit, though you called it a radical and I guess in egalitarian, because you talked about that stress on equality and so on. But at the same time, there is this contradiction. And I'm conscious of this contradiction also because, I recently did a book on caste where I trace debates that took place in legislatures in relation to, reforms that were attempted
I
at
got
different
your
points
question.
of time.
Yeah, I got your
So there were
question.
these-
Thank you.
There were these Orthodox Hindus who saw a very retrograde message in it
Yes,
of
yes, yes.
Varna being upheld, that hierarchy.
Yes.
And there was this the liberal ones who saw it as a doctrine of Advaita Vedanta, where everybody is equal.
May I
and all
respond? Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there is Varna and there is Jati. There are 4 Varnas and there are thousands of Jatis. Caste is not the correct translation for the word Varna, first of all. And as you said yourself, there is the whole discussion Swadharma and also Swabhava. The system of the Gita, because Krishna talks about how there's a divine sanction to the diversity that Krishna says he has created, the Chaturvarnyam. He says that he has created the 4 Varnas, but Varna is Vrunate iti Varnaha. That means it is a reference to the tendencies and to the inclinations and to choice. You know that in the Mahabharata, Dronacharya was a Brahmin, but he was fighting in the war. So, and in those days, that is why I focused on the context. There is a context to it. There is a context, there is a social context of the position of women. There is a social context to the Varnas, where the Kshatriyas were fighting in the war, the Brahmins were doing the teaching and doing the yajnas. There was a particular social context to it. So it would be foolish of us to take that as a model for forming society, because you cannot transplant Varna onto Jati, first of all, right? And so that is a system of occupations, because he says based on tasks, based on guna karma vibhagashaha, based on guna and karma. That is exactly what that shloka says. That it has been misused and misapplied is a separate matter. He does tell him these are the qualities of the Kshatriya. The quality of the Kshatriya is not to give up and run away from battle. He absolutely says that. But it's not the same thing as saying that it upholds jati. Jati Vada is absolutely evil, and the Gita has absolutely no connection with it.
Just one last quick question. Yeah, just I'd like to know that. Yeah, you have called it a decision text, which also I agree with. But what about the figure of the authority and the need to surrender before that authority as well? Meaning, as a translator, how were you coping with this? Meaning, on the one hand, it's a radical text. On the other hand, it's demanding that you need to surrender, and particularly the last few lines.
Radical from
slokas-
what point of view? Radical does not mean there is no authority.
No, do
Here, the
do
authority
No, my
was.
question is that
Oh.
how were you negotiating with this? That there is a need for surrender as well.
Yes. When you read the Gita and you read the Vishwarupam section, I was trembling. The whole time until then, I have translated it as Krishna. Right at that shloka, you will see I have written God. This is the voice of authority, the voice of a cosmic figure who says that everything is strung on him like Manigana Iva. That is the voice of authority that is speaking to us in this text. And if you put yourself in Arjuna's shoes, you will feel that.
Ma'am, we are having last question. So, sir is going to ask. Himanshu, sir.
No, Mani, I'm happy that I was able to come and catch the last few minutes of a very interesting discussion. I'm absolutely not read in the Gita, not to say well read, but I once attended a lecture by a very prominent philosopher from Odisha, Professor J.N. Mohanty. He came here to give a talk. And in this, it talked about a very important aspect of Gita, which is called Paurusatya. I'm unable to pronounce that Sanskrit word. It basically means that Gita has no author.
Oh, Apaurishayatva. Yes.
Apaurusayatya.
So
Now-
the idea of Apaurusheya is something that comes from the Veda,
Yeah.
where we say that Shruti is Apaurusheya.
Yes.
And Apaurusheya actually also refers to the fact that even God is not an author, for your information.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
as we say, Yasya Nishvasitam Veda, that means that the Veda is the breath of Brahman, but Brahman is actually the air, the breath is before even God. You know what I mean? Brahman is not a form. Brahman is a formless, nameless. Yasya Nishvasitam Veda. It is just the breath of Brahman. And Ishvara is also at a different level. Apaurusheya refers to the fact that it is just an emanation. It is a cosmic and natural form. But the Gita is not the Veda. The Gita is an excerpt from the Mahabharata. And it is a matter of convention that we have created it like this and we consider it as an authoritative text. But rather than saying authoritative text, it is actually a text that is from the voice of authority. That is the difference.
Please have a huge round of applause for all these speakers. So, how many of you have made running a lifestyle of yours in a day-to-day basis? How many of you run daily? I would like to ask, ladies and gentlemen, please. Ladies and gentlemen, କେତେ ଜଣ running କୁ ଗୋଟେ lifestyle ବନେଇଛନ୍ତି? If I can know, please raise your hands. Okay. So yeah. So it is very easy nowadays to make running a lifestyle, but the reality is it has been made easier. It was not easy. If we consider some 50 years back, it was really tough for women to come outside the home and pursue their passion, pursue their sporty life. So the next session is about the same topic. We have a book launched, The Day I Became a Runner, by Sohini Chattopadhyay ma'am, along with Swati Chopra ma'am. So please have a huge round of applause for both of them.
Thank you. And hello, everyone. So, Shohini and I are here to talk about her brilliant new book, The Day I Became a Runner, a